I thought I was safe. After 16 years of silence, 16 years of carefully building a life they could never touch, I believed my apartment was my sanctuary. The mortgage payments, the late nights working overtime, the slow climb from nothing to something, it all led to this moment of peace. Then came the pounding on my door at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. When I looked through the peephole, my blood turned to ice. Two faces I had worked so hard to forget were staring back at me, and I knew my carefully constructed world was about to crumble. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to know where you are watching from tonight. Are you somewhere safe? Please hit that like button if you have ever had to rebuild your life from nothing, and subscribe because this story gets darker before it gets better. Trust me, you will want to hear how I finally took control. The memories came flooding back as I stood frozen at that door. Frank. My father had always been a man whose hands spoke louder than his words. When I was 7, he broke my arm during one of his drunken rages because I had spilled juice on his newspaper. When I was 12, he threw a ceramic plate at my head, leaving a scar above my left eyebrow that I still cover with makeup today. My mother Diana was different, but equally damaging. She never hit me, but her words cut deeper than any physical blow. She would tell me I was worthless, that I brought out the worst in my father, that everything wrong with our family was somehow my fault. Diana had a gift for manipulation that would make professional con artists jealous. She could twist any situation to make herself the victim and everyone else the villain. When neighbors called child services after seeing my bruises, she convinced them I was clumsy and accident-prone. When teachers asked about my withdrawn behavior, she painted me as a troubled child who made up stories for attention. She controlled every penny that came into our house, keeping me from having friends by claiming we could not afford school activities or social events. The breaking point came on my 16th birthday. I had saved up $23 from babysitting jobs to buy myself a small cake from the grocery store bakery. It was nothing fancy, just a chocolate cake with white frosting, but it represented hope for a celebration that might actually be about me. Frank found the cake in the refrigerator and flew into a rage, accusing me of stealing money from Diana's purse. He grabbed the cake and smashed it against the kitchen wall, then forced me to clean up every crumb while he screamed about how ungrateful and selfish I was. That night, as I lay in bed with a fresh handprint across my face, I made a promise to myself. On my 18th birthday, I would disappear. I started planning immediately, hiding away every dollar I could earn researching bus routes and affordable places to live in nearby cities. I practiced walking quietly, speaking softly, making myself invisible until the day I could truly vanish. The day finally came 2 years later. While Frank was passed out drunk and Diana was at her weekly hair appointment, I packed everything important into a single backpack and walked out the front door. I took a Greyhound bus to Portland with $207 in my pocket and no plan beyond surviving the first week. Those early years were brutal. I slept in my beat-up Honda Civic for 3 months, showering at truck stops and washing my work clothes in gas station restrooms. I worked 3 jobs, cleaning office buildings at night, stocking shelves at a grocery store in the early mornings, and serving coffee during afternoon shifts at a small cafe. The cafe job changed everything because that is where I met Jake, a marketing coordinator who noticed I was reading business textbooks during my breaks. He suggested I apply for evening classes at the community college and even helped me figure out financial aid applications. Education became my lifeline. Every credit hour felt like a step further away from the life Frank and Diana had tried to trap me in. I studied marketing and communications, graduated with honors, and landed an entry-level position at Jake's company. Sarah, a graphic designer, became my first real friend. She taught me that healthy relationships do not involve walking on eggshells or constantly apologizing for existing. After 12 years of saving every possible penny, living in tiny apartments, and buying everything secondhand, I finally had enough for a down payment on my own place. The apartment was small, but perfect, 800 square feet of genuine safety. I had changed my phone number 4 times over the years and never left a forwarding address anywhere. As far as I knew, Frank and Diana had no idea where I lived or what I had become. I was wrong. The pounding grew louder, more insistent. I recognized the rhythm. Frank had always knocked like he was trying to break down whatever barrier stood between him and what he wanted. My hands shook as I unlocked the deadbolt, then the chain lock, then the secondary deadbolt I had installed last month. Frank pushed past me the moment the door cracked open, his familiar smell of stale alcohol and cigarettes filling my entryway. He looked older, his brown hair now completely gray, and his face marked with deep lines that spoke of years of hard drinking. But his eyes held the same cold anger I remembered from childhood. Diana followed behind him, her thin frame even more skeletal now, her sharp blue eyes scanning my apartment with obvious calculation. "We need to talk, Bethany," Frank announced, settling himself onto my cream-colored sofa like he owned it. "Nice place you got here. Real nice." Diana was already walking through my living room, touching my furniture, examining the framed photographs of Sarah and me at various company events. "This must have cost a fortune," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of accusation disguised as observation. "All this space for just one person seems wasteful." I forced my voice to stay steady. "You are not welcome here. I want you to leave immediately." The words felt strange in my mouth. I had never been able to speak to them this way as a child, but 16 years of therapy and independence had given me tools I did not have back then. Frank laughed the same harsh sound that used to make me flinch. "We are family, Bethany. You cannot just throw family out onto the street." He leaned back into my cushions, making himself comfortable. "Besides, we have been looking for you for months. Do you have any idea how hard it is to track down someone who does not want to be found?" The revelation sent ice through my veins. "How did you find me?" "Social media is a wonderful thing," Diana said, picking up a small ceramic bowl I had bought at a local artist's market. "Your friend Sarah posted a picture from your housewarming party last year. The apartment number was visible on your door in the background. From there, it was just a matter of finding the right building in the right neighborhood." My mind raced back to that night, remembering how happy I had felt, showing Sarah and a few co-workers my new space. The idea that something so innocent could lead my past directly to my doorstep felt like a violation of everything I had built. Frank stood up and walked to my kitchen, opening cabinet doors and examining their contents like he was conducting an inspection. "The thing is, Bethany, Diana, and I have fallen on some hard times. I lost my job at the factory 8 months ago, and we are behind on our mortgage payments. The bank is threatening foreclosure." "That is not my problem," I said, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "I have not spoken to either of you in 16 years. I do not owe you anything." Diana's expression shifted into the wounded, martyred look I remembered from my childhood. "We raised you for 18 years, fed you, clothed, you put a roof over your head. Now that we need help, you are going to turn your back on us." The manipulation was so familiar, it almost worked. For a split second, I felt that old guilt creeping in the voice that used to tell me I was selfish for wanting safety, ungrateful for expecting kindness. But then I looked around my apartment at the life I had built through my own work and sacrifice, and the guilt transformed into anger. "You did not raise me," I said, my voice getting stronger. "You terrorized me. You made every day of my childhood a nightmare, and I will not apologize for building something better." Frank's face darkened, and I saw him curl his hands into fists. "You always were an ungrateful little brat. Always thought you were better than us, did not you?" "I think I deserve basic human decency." "Yes." Diana moved closer, her voice dropping into that dangerous whisper I remembered from my teenage years. "This apartment is far too big for one person, Bethany, and you have done well for yourself clearly. We are not asking for charity. We are asking for family to help family. Surely you can spare a room for your parents who gave you everything. You gave me trauma and scars. That is what you gave me." Frank took a step toward me, and I instinctively backed against the wall. The movement was automatic, learned from years of reading his moods and trying to avoid his reach. "Watch your mouth, girl. You may be 32 years old, but I am still your father. Being my father means nothing if you never acted like one." The words hung in the air between us, and I watched Frank's expression shift from anger to rage. This was the look that used to precede his worst attacks, the moment when his control would snap and his hands would start moving. But I was not a frightened child anymore, and this was my home, not his. Diana had found my home office and was rifling through my desk drawers with the methodical efficiency of someone conducting a search. "Look at all these official papers," she called to Frank. "Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds. Our little Bethany has become quite the successful businesswoman." Frank joined her in the office, and I followed, knowing I needed to protect my personal documents, but terrified of what would happen if I tried to physically stop them. Diana held up my property deed with a triumphant expression. "This apartment is worth $350,000, Frank. Our daughter has been living in luxury while her parents struggle to keep their house." "That is my apartment," I said. "I worked for 12 years to buy it. I earned every dollar of the down payment I make, every mortgage payment I pay, every utility bill. You have no claim to any of this." "Actually," Diana said, settling into my desk chair like she belonged there, "we do. We spoke with a lawyer before coming here. In this state, children have a legal obligation to support their parents if the parents can prove financial need. It is called filial responsibility, and it means you could be legally required to provide us with housing and financial support." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had never heard of such a law, but Diana spoke with such confidence that doubt crept in immediately. "That is not true." "It is absolutely true. And if you do not cooperate voluntarily, we will file a lawsuit tomorrow morning. We will claim elder abuse through neglect, abandonment, and failure to provide necessary care. How do you think that will look to a judge, a successful woman who refuses to help her elderly parents?" Frank was nodding along, his anger replaced by greed, as he looked around my office at the computer equipment and framed certificates from my marketing courses. "We are not asking for everything, Bethany, just this apartment. You can find somewhere smaller, cheaper, but we need stability, and you have the means to provide it. Get out." My voice was shaking now, not from fear, but from a rage I had never allowed myself to feel as a child. "Get out of my home right now, or I am calling the police." "The police?" Diana laughed, a cold sound that filled the small office. "And tell them that your parents came to visit and asked for help, that we are having a family discussion in our daughter's apartment. Do you really think they are going to arrest us for that?" She was right, and we all knew it. They had not technically broken any laws by knocking on my door, and I had let them in voluntarily. Any reasonable person would see this as a family dispute, not a criminal matter. The realization made me feel trapped in a way I had not experienced since I was 18 years old. Frank moved to my computer and started trying to access my financial records. We just need to understand your complete financial situation so we can work out a fair arrangement. You have been hiding your success from us, but we have a right to know what our daughter has achieved. You have no rights here, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Their presence in my space was making me feel small again, reverting to the powerless child who had to endure whatever they decided to dish out. Diana must have sensed my weakening resolve because she pressed harder. We are not leaving until this is resolved, Bethany. We have nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. If you force us out tonight, we will be homeless by morning. Is that really what you want, to put your own parents on the street? The emotional manipulation was expertly crafted. Even knowing what she was doing, even understanding the game, I could feel myself starting to waver. This was how they had controlled me for 18 years, by making their problems my responsibility, by twisting every situation until I was the villain for wanting basic boundaries. Frank found my laptop and started opening financial applications. Look at this, Diana. She has got investment accounts, savings accounts, retirement funds. She has been hoarding money while we suffered. I earned that money. I saved that money. I invested that money. It is mine. Family shares, Bethany, Diana said. That is what family does. When one person succeeds, everyone succeeds. When one person struggles, everyone helps. We taught you that when you were young. You taught me that I was responsible for everyone's happiness except my own. Frank looked up from the laptop screen, his eyes narrow with calculation. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to sign over this apartment to us, and we are going to let you continue living here while you find someplace smaller and more appropriate for a single woman. You are also going to set up a monthly payment plan to help us with our other expenses. Call it rent, call it family support, call it whatever makes you feel better. And if I refuse, then we file that lawsuit tomorrow, and we also start telling everyone in your company and your social circle about your family history. How do you think your coworkers would feel if they knew you abandoned your parents? How would your friend Sarah react if she knew you have been lying about your background all these years? The threat was like a punch to the stomach. I had never lied to Sarah exactly, but I had certainly never told her the complete truth about my childhood. The idea of my past being weaponized against the relationships I had worked so hard to build felt devastating. Diana stood up and moved closer to me. We are not unreasonable people, Bethany. We are just parents who need help, and we have a daughter who has the means to provide that help. This can be easy, or this can be very, very difficult. The choice is entirely up to you. I looked at these two people who had shaped my childhood through fear and manipulation, who had found me despite all my precautions, who were now trying to take the one thing that represented my freedom and independence. And for the first time in 16 years, I stopped feeling afraid and started feeling angry. I excused myself to the bathroom, telling them I needed a moment to think about their proposal. But instead of thinking, I was planning. Hidden in my bedroom closet was a small security camera I had installed 6 months earlier after a break-in in the building next door. I activated the device remotely using an app on my phone, positioning it to capture audio and video of my living room and kitchen area. When I returned, Frank was in my kitchen, helping himself to a beer from my refrigerator. The casual entitlement of the gesture sent fresh waves of rage through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. If they were going to threaten me with legal action, I wanted evidence of exactly how they were conducting themselves in my home. "Have you made your decision?" Diana asked, settling back into my armchair like she was holding court. "I need more information about this law you mentioned," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Filial responsibility. I want to understand my legal obligations before I agree to anything." Frank laughed, the sound harsh in my small apartment. "Trying to find loopholes already. You always were too clever for your own good, Bethany." "I am trying to understand the situation." "The situation is simple," Diana said. "We are your parents. We need help, and you have the means to provide that help. Everything else is just details." Frank finished his beer and opened another one without asking. "You know what I think, Diana? I think our daughter has gotten too comfortable in her fancy apartment. I think she has forgotten where she comes from, forgotten the people who made her who she is. I made myself who I am. You two had nothing to do with the person I became." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Frank's voice was getting louder, more aggressive. "Is that how you sleep at night, pretending you accomplished everything on your own?" "I did accomplish everything on my own." "We gave you 18 years of food, shelter, clothing, education. You gave me 18 years of terror." Frank stood up so quickly that his chair fell backward. "You ungrateful little witch. After everything we sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us." The word witch was not what he had originally intended to say, and we all knew it. Even drunk and angry, he was smart enough not to use his preferred vocabulary while making demands in my apartment. But the restraint he was showing only made his presence more threatening, not less. Diana remained seated, but her voice took on a sharp edge. "Frank is right, Bethany. You have developed a very selective memory about your childhood. We were not perfect parents, but we did our best with limited resources. Your best included breaking my arm when I was 7. That was an accident during a disagreement. Your best included calling me worthless every day for 18 years. That was discipline. You were a difficult child who required firm guidance. The revisionist history was breathtaking in its audacity. They were not just denying the abuse, they were rewriting it as justified parenting techniques. I realized that no amount of evidence or argument would ever make them acknowledge what they had done to me." Frank moved closer, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath, mixed with the same cologne he had worn throughout my childhood. "You think you are so much better than us now. Don, not you. Living in your fancy apartment, working your fancy job, pretending to be something you are not." "I am not pretending to be anything. I am exactly who I chose to become. You are our daughter, and you will always be our daughter. That means something whether you like it or not." Frank reached out and grabbed my wrist, his fingers closing around it with the same grip I remembered from childhood. "You are going to help us, Bethany. One way or another, you are going to do the right thing." The physical contact broke something in me. For 16 years, I had worked to forget how it felt to be trapped by his hands, how powerless and small he could make me feel with just his touch. But I was not that frightened child anymore, and this was my home, not his. "Let go of me." "Not until you understand what we are asking." "You are not asking anything. You are demanding, and you are threatening, and you are putting your hands on me against my will." Frank's grip tightened, and I felt the old panic starting to rise in my chest. But alongside the panic was something new, a fury I had never allowed myself to feel when I was young and dependent on them for survival. "Let go of me now, or I will make you let go." Frank laughed, the same dismissive sound he had used to mock me throughout my childhood. "And how exactly are you going to do that, princess?" I looked him directly in the eye, this man who had spent 18 years convincing me I was weak and worthless and incapable of standing up for myself. "Try me." Diana was watching our interaction with interest, as if she was curious to see whether I would revert to my childhood patterns of submission. But those patterns had been broken years ago through therapy and hard work and the simple passage of time. Frank released my wrist and took a step back, but his expression remained threatening. "You have until tomorrow morning to make a decision, Bethany. Sign over the apartment, or we start making your life very complicated." My answer is no. "Then you have made a very stupid choice." Frank moved toward the kitchen, and I thought he was going to leave. Instead, he opened my refrigerator again and pulled out another beer. "Actually, Diana, I think we should stay here tonight. Give Bethany some time to really think about what we are offering." "You are not staying in my apartment. Watch us." Frank settled back onto my sofa with his fresh beer. "This place is plenty big enough for 3 people. You have got a whole separate bedroom, and this couch looks comfortable enough for 2 old folks who do not have anywhere else to go." Diana smiled, the expression cold and calculating. "That is actually a wonderful idea, Frank. A sleepover, just like when Bethany was little. We can spend the evening getting reacquainted, talking about old times." The prospect of them staying overnight in my sanctuary felt like a violation beyond anything they had already done. But I also realized that their continued presence might work in my favor. The longer they stayed, the more evidence I would have of their harassment and intimidation. "Fine," I said. "Stay tonight. But tomorrow morning, you leave and you never contact me again." Frank raised his beer in a mock toast. "We will see about that, princess. We will see about that." As the evening wore on, Frank drank more and became increasingly aggressive, while Diana continued her psychological manipulation with surgical precision. But for the first time in my life, I was not the helpless victim of their abuse. I was a 32-year-old woman with my own resources, my own support system, and my own plan. And I was recording everything. By 3 a.m., Frank had consumed 6 beers and was displaying the same escalating pattern of drunken aggression I remembered from my childhood. Diana had stationed herself at my computer, going through my financial records with the methodical thoroughness of an auditor. Every few minutes, she would call out another discovery about my assets, each announcement making Frank more resentful and demanding. "Look at this, Frank. She has got $78,000 in her retirement account. At 32 years old, while we are facing foreclosure, she has been stockpiling money like some kind of miser." Frank lurched up from the couch and stumbled toward my office. $78,000, show me. I remained in my kitchen washing dishes that were already clean, trying to stay busy and out of their direct line of sight, while the hidden camera captured their invasion of my privacy. The longer this went on, the stronger my legal case would become. "Here is the thing, Bethany," Diana called out to me. "We are not just asking for your apartment anymore. We need you to liquidate some of these accounts and give us access to cash. The foreclosure proceedings start next week, and we need $35,000 to bring our mortgage current." "That is not going to happen," I replied, not looking up from the spotless plate I was drying for the 3rd time. Frank appeared in the kitchen doorway, swaying slightly. "Everything you have, we gave you. The work ethic, the intelligence, the determination. You would not exist without us, which means everything you own belongs to us. That is not how the world works. That is exactly how family works." Frank moved closer, backing me against the kitchen counter. "You think you can just forget about us, pretend we do not exist, build your little life, and keep everything for yourself." The counter edge pressed into my lower back as Frank continued advancing. "I built my life specifically to get away from both of you. And now we found you. So what was the point of all that running?" The question hung in the air between us, and I realized he was right about one thing. Running had only worked for as long as I remained hidden. But hiding was not a sustainable long-term strategy, and now that they had found me, I needed a different approach. The point was to become strong enough to handle this moment. Frank laughed, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. You are not strong, Bethany. You are the same scared little girl who used to hide in the closet when I came home drunk. Try me. Diana appeared behind Frank, her thin face sharp with irritation. This conversation is going in circles. Bethany here is what is going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you are going to transfer $35,000 into our account to stop the foreclosure. Then you are going to start looking for a smaller apartment while we get settled here. This is not a negotiation anymore. And if I refuse, then we make some phone calls, Diana said. To your employer, to your friends, to your neighbors. We tell them about your family history, about how you abandoned your parents in their time of need. We file that lawsuit and drag your name through the court system. We make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Frank nodded, emboldened by Diana's threats. We are not going away, Bethany. We will never go away. So you can either help us willingly, or we will take what we need and destroy your reputation in the process. The threat was comprehensive and terrifying, but it was also their mistake. By making it clear that they intended to destroy me if I did not comply, they had moved beyond manipulation into outright extortion. And unlike their earlier veiled threats, this was being recorded in high definition. I need some air, I said, moving toward my sliding door that led to a small balcony. This is a lot to process. You have got 5 minutes, Frank said. Then we want an answer. I stepped onto the balcony and immediately called Jake, keeping my voice low. He answered on the second ring despite the early hour. Bethany, what is wrong? My parents found me. They are in my apartment demanding money and threatening to sue me if I do not comply. I have been recording everything, but I need help. Jesus, are you safe right now? For the moment, but Frank is drunk and getting more aggressive, and they are talking about staying permanently. I do not know what to do. Call the police, now. They have not technically broken any laws yet. They are not threatening physical violence explicitly, and I let them in voluntarily. The police will treat this as a family dispute. Then what do you need? I need you to be ready to come over if this escalates. And I need you to know that if something happens to me tonight, all the evidence is saved to my cloud storage account. Bethany, you are scaring me. Just call 911. Not yet, but soon, I think. I hung up and stood on the balcony for another few minutes, gathering my courage for what I knew was coming. Frank would not be satisfied with threats much longer, and Diana would keep pushing until she got the response she wanted. But this time, when they showed their true nature, there would be consequences. When I came back inside, Frank was standing in my living room with a bottle of my wine, drinking directly from it. Time is up, Princess. What is it going to be? My answer is still no. Wrong answer. Frank threw the wine bottle against my wall, where it shattered and stained the white paint with red streaks. I am done being nice about this. Frank, Diana said sharply, control yourself. No, Diana, I am tired of playing games with this ungrateful little brat. She wants to act like she does not have parents. Fine, I will remind her what happens when you disrespect your father. Frank moved toward me with the same purposeful stride he had used when I was a child, the walk that meant someone was about to get hurt. But I was not a child anymore, and this was not his house. Stay away from me, or what you will call the police. You will run away again. You already tried running Bethany. It did not work. He reached for me with both hands, the same way he had grabbed me thousands of times before. But this time, Instead of freezing or cowering, I stepped aside and pushed him as hard as I could. Frank, off balance from alcohol and unexpected resistance, stumbled backward and fell, his head striking the corner of my coffee table with a wet, terrible sound. The apartment went completely silent, except for the sound of Frank's breathing, which was becoming increasingly labored and irregular. Diana stood frozen, staring at her husband's crumpled form, a pool of blood spreading slowly across my hardwood floor. "What did you do?" Diana whispered. "I defended myself." Diana knelt beside Frank, whose eyes were closed and whose breathing was becoming more shallow with each passing second. Frank, can you hear me?" I walked to my phone and dialed 911, my hands surprisingly steady. When the operator answered, I spoke clearly and calmly. "I need police and an ambulance at 1247 Oak Street, apartment 4B. 2 people broke into my home, threatened me, and during an assault, one of them was injured. I was defending myself." Diana looked up at me with an expression of shock and rage. "Broke in. We are your parents. You let us in. And then you refused to leave when I asked you to destroy my property, threatened me financially and physically, and attempted to assault me. That makes you trespassers and attackers, not guests." The operator stayed on the line while we waited for emergency services, asking questions about Frank's condition and my safety. Diana knelt beside her husband, alternating between trying to help him and shooting accusatory glares in my direction. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You did this to him. He did this to himself when he decided to put his hands on me. He is your father. He is a man who broke into my home and tried to hurt me. That is all he is." The paramedics arrived first, followed immediately by 2 police officers. As the EMTs worked on Frank, one of the officers took my statement, while the other interviewed Diana. I provided them with my security footage, which showed the entire evening from their aggressive entry through the final confrontation. Frank was unconscious when they loaded him onto the stretcher, his face pale and his breathing assisted by a machine. Diana tried to follow the ambulance, but the second officer informed her that she was being detained for questioning. "Mrs. Morrison, you and your husband entered this apartment without permission, refused to leave when asked destroyed property, and made threatening statements toward the resident. We are going to need you to come down to the station. She is our daughter." We were having a family discussion. "Ma'am, according to the video evidence, you and your husband committed multiple crimes tonight. Being related to the victim does not give you the right to break the law." As they led Diana away in handcuffs, she turned back to me one final time. "This is not over, Bethany. No matter what happens, this is not over." "Yes," I said quietly, "it is." Frank died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. The doctors said the head trauma had caused massive bleeding in his brain, and there was nothing they could have done, even if he had received medical attention immediately. Diana was charged with breaking and entering destruction of property, harassment, and conspiracy to commit extortion. The security footage provided undeniable evidence of their threats and intimidation tactics. During those first weeks after their arrest, I felt completely hollow. Despite everything Frank had done to me, despite the years of abuse and terror, his death left me with an unexpected sense of guilt and loss. I had not intended to kill him. I had only meant to protect myself. But the outcome was the same, and I struggled to reconcile my relief at being free with my horror at how that freedom had been achieved. Sarah stayed with me for the first few days, helping me clean up the destruction and arrange for professional trauma cleaning for the bloodstains on my floor. Jake coordinated with my employer to give me time off for counseling and legal proceedings. Both of them listened patiently as I processed my conflicted emotions about Frank's death. "You did what you had to do," Sarah said one evening as we sat in my living room, now restored to its original condition. "He made the choice to come here to threaten you, to put his hands on you. Everything that happened after that was a consequence of his actions, not yours." My therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped me understand that my guilt was a normal response to trauma, not evidence of wrongdoing. Children who grow up with abusive parents often develop an exaggerated sense of responsibility for other people's emotions and actions, she explained. "You are not responsible for your father's choices, including the choice that led to his death." The legal proceedings were straightforward, thanks to the video evidence. The district attorney ruled Frank's death an accidental result of lawful self-defense, and no charges were filed against me. Diana was sentenced to 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to the charges against her. During her sentencing hearing, Diana made one final attempt at manipulation, tearfully telling the judge about losing her husband and begging for mercy based on her grief. But the prosecutor played excerpts from the security footage, letting Diana's own words demonstrate her lack of remorse and continued sense of entitlement. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "the defendant showed no concern for her daughter's well-being, only for what she could extract from her. Even after causing this tragedy through her own criminal behavior, she continues to blame the victim and shows no acknowledgement of wrongdoing." As the years passed, I gradually found peace with what had happened that night. I started volunteering with a local organization that helped domestic abuse survivors, using my experience to help others understand that family violence does not end when you become an adult. Many adult survivors face exactly the kind of financial and emotional manipulation I had experienced, and few resources exist to help them navigate these complex situations. The work was healing for me in ways I had not expected. Each person I helped gave me another reason to believe that surviving my childhood had been worth it, not just for my own sake, but for the good I could do with the strength I had gained through that survival. I kept my apartment despite the painful memories associated with it. With time and therapy, I learned to see it not as the place where my father died, but as the place where I finally stood up for myself after 32 years of fear. The living room where Frank had bled became the space where I hosted support group meetings. The kitchen where Diana had rifled through my papers became the place where I prepared meals for friends who had become my chosen family. Jake and Sarah remained my closest confidants, along with several others I met through my volunteer work. We created the kind of family I had never experienced as a child, one based on mutual respect, unconditional support, and genuine love, rather than obligation and fear. Sometimes people ask me if I regret fighting back that night, if I wish I had just given Frank and Diana what they wanted to avoid the tragedy that followed. The question always surprises me because the answer is so clear. I regret that Frank died, but I do not regret defending myself. I regret that Diana and I will never have a healthy relationship, but I do not regret refusing to enable her abuse. Most importantly, I learned that family is not defined by blood or legal obligation, but by love and mutual respect. Real family does not demand your destruction in exchange for their comfort. Real family does not show up after 16 years of silence with threats and demands. Real family celebrates your success instead of trying to take it away. The apartment that Frank and Diana tried to steal from me became the foundation for everything good in my life. It is where I host holiday dinners for my chosen family. It is where I work on the nonprofit organization I founded to help adult survivors of family abuse. It is where I sleep peacefully every night, knowing that I am safe and protected by people who genuinely care about my well-being. Sometimes the only way to truly live is to refuse to die for someone else's comfort. And sometimes setting boundaries is not just about saying no. It is about saying yes to the life you deserve to live. I said yes that night, and I have been saying yes every day since. For anyone watching this who is struggling with family members who try to use guilt, obligation, and manipulation to control you, please know that you deserve better. You deserve relationships built on love and respect, not fear and duty. And sometimes the family you choose is infinitely more valuable than the family you were born into. What boundaries have you had to set in your own life? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult circumstances, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggles. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the courage to protect your own peace, whatever that might look like for you.